There it is. And we are going to talk a little bit of the some of the practical financial things that we want to take a look at. All right. We've been looking at different texts, and of course, I think that there are many, many texts that we can look at throughout this course as it relates to our integrity as well as to finances. Philippians 2:3-4 says, "Dear friends, I urge you as aliens and strangers in the world to abstain from sinful desires, which war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us." And so here it's we are recognizing, first of all, that we are aliens and strangers in the world, right? This is the dot. This is not the whole line. This is only one part of our existence when we believe that we are actually citizens of heaven. And so for this short time that we have on earth, to abstain from sinful desires, which do war against our soul. And that as Pastor Moses was saying, gets back to our conscience to some degree, because it's, as we do these things, it will wage a war in us. And we want to live such good lives that though we are accused of doing wrong, people who are not Christians, that maybe the only Bible that they read is how we live our lives, and that our good deeds will also glorify God. The book talks about 6 ways to grow as a Christian leader on page 22, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but we want to focus on self-development and not self-fulfillment. Self-fulfillment means, seeking to fully fulfill my own happiness. We want to work on self-development, and that's why I appreciate you all taking the time. I know you have other things you could be doing, but to sit through this class and figure out how can I help other people as well is part of that. We need to grow through association, and that's why I wish we had more time to network together in this class, but who do we associate with? Who are we spending our time with? How can we grow together and learn from each other? Adopt a personal creed. I will not sacrifice my integrity for blank. And that is, what will you choose to do? So I will not sacrifice my integrity for time. And that was something that we learned when we lived in West Africa, like Emmeline was saying. Allowing ourselves to be arrested. We may lose a full day instead of paying a bribe, but sitting at that police station after 6-8 hours, they realize they're not getting something from you, they let you go. So you have to make a personal creed for yourself for what you will do in terms of your own integrity. Build a habit of continual learning. Guide learning with major themes to help channel your energy. Know what gives you energy, but this is really the one I want to talk about, is to move from duty to delight. Move from duty to delight. A lot of people see keeping a budget as a duty, and I think that I heard from Emmeline a little bit of delight as she shared. She can say amen or not to that. There's a delight that comes when you are in.
Amen.
Okay, thank you, Emily. There's a delight that comes when you're in charge of your finances, when you know what's happening. As I budget, it's like, bring a bill. I'm ready for it. I've prepared for it, but it starts as a duty, and it's not fun at first, and especially when you're digging yourself out from debt and you just don't have enough to cover what the bills are. But that's where we need to continue to do it, because we do know that eventually it brings peace and it brings joy. And that's what we want to see happen as we do our finances. There are 2 learning outcomes relating to finances that we want to accomplish in this course. Demonstrate the ability to create and interpret a basic budget, and interpret the meaning of basic financial spreadsheets. And so on page 25, you were introduced to the 4 basic building blocks of financial management, all right? And this is the 4 building blocks that we want to cover in this course. So we have our design. We need to design our system. If we don't have a system in our churches or in our ministries or in our businesses. And then there are 4 building blocks that become part of that. The accounting records, and we'll look at these more specifically in a minute, the financial planning that we need to do, the financial monitoring that we need to do, and then the internal controls. When we put those 4 building blocks together, it will give us financial control, and that ultimately will lead to happy stakeholders. And God being the owner of all things, we want God to be a happy stakeholder, as well as other stakeholders that we have, whether it's customers, clients, people that we're serving, and for ourselves as well. I just want, if anybody is having any issues with my screen that I'm not aware of, please take your mic off and tell me. I'm not checking chats right now, just so we know. All right, and so let's define what these are. 4 building blocks of financial management. The first is accounting records. Every organization must keep accurate record of financial transactions that take place to show how funds have been used. Accounting records also provide valuable information about how the organization is being managed and whether it is achieving its objectives. You do that for your family, you do that for your church, you do that for your ministry, you do that for your business. Okay, so that is across the board, that we need to keep accurate records of financial transactions to give information about how we are being managed or how we are managing. So that's accounting records, pretty basic. Inflow of income, outflow of expenses. We will not get too terribly complicated with that in this course. The second one is financial planning. Linked to the organization's strategic and operational plans, the budget is the cornerstone of any financial management system and plays an important role in monitoring the use of the funds. So you can have all the accounting records you want, but are you actually achieving what you want to achieve? The budget it links into your strategic plan to help you achieve what it is you are trying to achieve. And then the accounting records are the way that you check whether or not you are achieving your goals, whether you are having the impacts that you hoped to have, whether money is going to achieve the goals that you set out. So once we have the budget, we have the financial plans in place, we're keeping our accounting records, now we begin doing our financial monitoring. Providing that the organization has set a budget and has kept and reconciled its accounting records in a clear and timely manner, it is then a very simple matter to produce financial reports which allow the managers to assess the progress of an organization. Okay, and that's often where we struggle. We can set a budget, we can start tracking income and expenses, but whether or not we are creating the reports that help us monitor how the church is doing 3 months into the year, 6 months into the year, how the ministry is doing, how we as a family are doing, and so on, that becomes a critical part. And then the last one is another area that can be a big challenge, is internal controls. And we'll be spending some time, good amount of time on this. So internal controls, these are a system of controls, checks and balances, which are put in place to safeguard an organization's assets and manage internal risk. Their purpose is to deter opportunistic theft or fraud and to detect errors and omissions in the accounting records. An effective internal control system also protects staff involved in financial tasks. Internal controls are critical. It is the critical way in which we protect the business, we protect the organization, we protect the church, we protect ourselves and our employees and the volunteers, because it is that checks and balance that's set into place so that temptation comes in, but it can be immediately removed by having effective internal controls. The biggest amount of fraud, embezzlement, theft takes place because of a lack of internal controls. The system is not set up to safeguard the organization as well as the people. And if churches were able to have an effective internal control system, it would decrease a lot of the challenges. Reasons people act with questionable integrity. Well, everyone else is doing it. And these are some of the things that we have to work and guard against. Everyone else may be doing it. As my mom always said, if everyone else jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? It's easy for us to say, well, it's just what everybody else does, so therefore we will do it. Another reason we give, we've always done it this way. Why do we need to change it? We've always done it. And that's again where, as Grace was saying, our conscience becomes seared, and we just say that's been our culture. That's been the way our family does it. This is the way this business works. This is just what you got to do in order to survive. Another one, if we don't do it, someone else will. That's a huge problem. You know, for businesses, especially who want to get a contract, if we don't pay this bribe, if we don't appreciate this person, somebody else is going to, and they're going to get the contract. And again, that's where we set this creed for ourselves, right? What is it that we are willing or unwilling to do? And I can tell you some great stories of people who have set those creeds, and it's actually been a blessing to them and to their business, even though they've lost contract. Another one, nobody's hurt by it. Nobody's hurt. I'm not hurting anybody by doing this. It doesn't matter how it gets done, as long as it gets done. Again, the end justifies the means, right? And that's where we need to say no. The means is also important. How we do it has to be important in order for us to be able to get where we want to go. It works, so let's not ask too many questions. No one's going to notice, and besides, we'll fix it before they do. And somebody mentioned that the other day, that's how a lot of embezzlement starts. Christian leaders who take just a little bit because they're in a fix, but nobody will notice, and I'll pay it back. But we start going down that slippery slope, and it becomes an issue. We say it's legal, but, and we justify why we want to get around the legality. It's too expensive, and therefore we're going to try some other things. And then, as you read about Victor in this workbook, it has to be done to save the organization and a lot of jobs. So he's trying to figure out how to rationalize the decision that he's being challenged with, his morality, his ethics, in order to save the organization and a lot of jobs. So what are some facts regarding financial actions that lack integrity? According to Global Visions researcher David B., and I can't see his name, Barrett, an estimated $16 billion was embezzled by the world's Christian churches in the year 2000, with an estimated $75 billion embezzled between 1980 and 2000. And we see that continues to grow and is a challenge. It is estimated that 5 to 7% of nonprofit donations, which is actually tens of billions of dollars, will be lost as a result of stealing. Most of the stealing is done by the accounting department and upper management, and lack of internal controls is usually what allows the fraud to occur. And so we have to know that this is an issue around the world, and it's an issue both inside the church and outside the church, as well as in the nonprofits. We've looked at this in our business class. This is the Corruption Perception Index from 2017. And at the bottom, you can see the darker the red, the more corruption, the more yellow, the very more clean. And so you can see that corruption is an issue around the world. And you can Google this yourself for the Transparency International to see where different countries are in terms of the perceived level of corruption. Of course, it's only through interviews. But for the countries that we are working with in this DML, here are the various countries. So Burkina Faso comes in as the cleanest of the 10 at 74. Ghana is at 81. Tanzania is at 103. Ethiopia 107. Liberia 122. And then we get to the right-hand side, Nigeria 148, Uganda 151, Cameroon 153, and Burundi 157. And so there are some people, I don't know what Ghanaians are doing right now, but often I hear Ghanaians, when they see their score, they say, no, that's not true, it's worse than that. Oftentimes it feels like it's bad because we encounter it so often, right? And so this is a challenge, and it's a reality that we have as we do our work. 47% of a different research study find that their competitors believe that their competitors have engaged in unethical or illegal activity in order to gain an edge in the market. So what happens if you believe that the majority of people around you are cheating? What happens to you? Then you start saying, well, everybody is doing it, and therefore if I'm going to survive, I have to do it as well. And there's a lot of people believe, especially in the marketplace, in the business world, that it's not an option to be ethical if you're going to be successful. I think this was something that Pastor Dr. Gaga pointed out at one point. The 10 richest individuals in Africa possess the wealth equivalent to the wealth of the poorest half of the nation. It's a hard thing to get your mind around. The 10 richest individuals in Africa possess wealth equivalent to the wealth of the poorest half of the population. And so if there's 1.25 billion right now, that means that the 10 richest individuals in Africa have as much wealth as the total amount of wealth of 750,000 Africans. So we have a problem as it relates to equity. Church fraud characteristically takes place over a long period of time, 7 years on average, and it involves small sums stolen intermittently. For that reason, it can be difficult to detect. To make matters worse, many churches lack the internal financial controls necessary to expose and prevent fraud. And so that's something that we have to think through. And often with church fraud, it can take little by little by little, and can go over the course of 7 years before it's detected. According to an Intuit survey from 2015, 87% of small business owners do their own books, and 47% claim financial illiteracy. That's a problem right there. More than half of small business startups never survive to see 5 years of operations. By year 8, the failure rates are in the 80+ percentage. And so as a church, what is our role and our responsibility? I remember Reverend Tongoi from Kenya, who was one of my mentors as it relates to business as mission, said that the church should not ask for a tithe until they have taught personal finance and budgeting and also business finance. And then they have the right to ask for that. That's a controversial statement, and Dr. Gaga will be taking us through that next week, but just wanted to throw that out there as a thought. Therefore, all organizations, for-profit or not, need accurate bookkeeping and accounting to avoid negative consequences like fines, a damaged reputation, and even closing. And this is a critical thing that we must do. Repercussions tend to be magnified for churches and NGOs. They face losing their credibility and their status. And I think we all know that people will say, that person was a Christian. We Christians are looked at and expected once they give their life to Christ that they have fully internalized everything that God is calling them to be. And we all know that the church is full of sinners. The general public tends to hold churches and faith-based NGOs to higher standards. And that's why we believe that this class is important for our testimony of the church, but also for the protection of the church and for the ability to more fully fulfill what God is calling us to do. To protect an organization, both bookkeeping and accounting are crucial, but they are not the same thing. It's important to know the difference, and we are going to get into that. Most churches and NGOs accurately handle the bookkeeping part, tracking member donations and spending, even the individual contribution statements to members, and generating of total reports. And so I want us to go into small groups to have a discussion about the observations of what we have been talking about, both conscience as well as how we are handling finances in our churches, in our places of ministry. What are the challenges that you are seeing or that you've experienced? What are your personal challenges in it, but also what do you see, I'm going to stop sharing, in your various